Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Well, yeah, thanks, Sylvia, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here to share about daily growth. And I too will just acknowledge that I'm joining on the lands where the Bunurong, Boonwurrung and Wadawurrung people have a connection. And I acknowledge the First Nations people right across Australia and across the world. And in particular, here in Australia, we're so lucky for their beautiful custodianship of land, waters and airways over so many generations and the wisdom that they've passed down. And yeah, look, I'm delighted. I'm a New Zealander by background, but delighted to have been in Australia 20 years as of the 23rd of February this year, and call Australia very much my home. So I'm keen to share today about our daily growth parenting app. And I just want to start by acknowledging that this has been supported by a really large and beautiful team, a very diverse team. And I also want to acknowledge our partners. So Daily Growth is a partnership with Way Up Work, who are an external Aboriginal organisation focused on earth mindfulness practice. We also work with Melly and have co-designed in particular with Melly. We have many partners in the community these days, but Melly have been there since the beginning. They're an umbrella organisation in the Barwon region of Victoria. And also acknowledging tuning into kids and Sophie, who's here today, and Christiana.
That'll be great. Following
are also our partners and investigators. Great. So just starting, I guess, where we always do with research and thinking about what has been done and what are the gaps. We know that there are excellent parenting programs, and from meta-analyses, we know that there's actually really solid, really quite strong evidence showing that parenting programs that are focused on improving child emotion regulation skills, they're effective in preventing child mental illness. The difficulty and the frustration for most of us working at a universal level out in the community is that most parents and carers don't receive evidence-based support at the moment. And this is particularly true for certain groups of families. So that includes our First Nations, Indigenous families, includes culturally and linguistically diverse families, includes families who might be experiencing financial deprivation or other kinds of social disadvantage. On the whole, it's really tricky to reach and connect with dads in the community. And I guess what Daily Growth is about has been trying to think about that question in particular, is how do we get evidence-based parenting support out in the community in a way that is really getting into the hands of diverse families. So just a little sneak peek, I'll be talking today about Daily Growth, which is a parenting app, just what it looks like. I'll also be talking about the journey of the co-design of parenting, of Daily Growth, the app. And so there's many different sub-studies that I'll talk about, and I guess just give a bird's eye view story narrative as we go through, rather than sort of focusing on one of the studies in particular. But here I just wanted to flag that in embarking on the journey, I guess we were wanting to really use the beautiful, creative, iterative design processes as part of design thinking, which have been used a lot in industry. So you can see at the top in the green, the design thinking, there's some really flexible ways of working in co-design that in terms of discovery, ideation and prototyping, but that really emphasise that it's an iterative process. It has to be very flexible, and it also can be incredibly creative. So our team, we have partnered for many years with the designers all the way through those stages. But what we also wanted to do was draw on the incredible science and theoretical rigour of some of the other frameworks, including intervention mapping. And that really sort of brings transparency and rigour to what is design thinking, which has been less documented over time. So that was kind of our first, and we have a paper on that if anyone's interested. Otherwise, as I said, I'm really going to just take us through a bit of a bird's eye journey through the steps of developing and co-designing daily growth. So we started with a needs assessment, having one-on-one interviews with a really diverse group of parents and carers of kids aged 2 to 5 years, and also speaking to professionals. We use some, I learned and our team learned a lot about co-design processes, working with our designers, where this is their, this is their everyday. So we did 3 two-hour workshops with parents and carers to understand more and I guess really show them the journey, the end user journey, and to get their input in actually developing and designing what we might be doing with families. So before I go back on the journey with you, I'll just give you a little bit of a sense, and I won't, again, this isn't detailed, but really just designed to give a little bit of a sense of the findings. So we have, from a qualitative analysis process from our interviews with 18 parents, from that needs assessment, we then developed user personas, and this is commonly used in co-design. It really is bringing to life different groups of parents in terms of their needs, preferences, interests, wants. It isn't so much defining parents by demographics, for example. It's really trying to think about how, in fact, the way we now conceptualize what our user personas are is that all of us might be one of these personas on any given day. So we have 4 mindsets. The I can parent or carer. This is a parent who's pretty well resourced. I'm not going to go through in detail here to bring to life each of the mindsets, but really just to give a bit of a sense of our design process. We thought about the I know mindset, which can be slightly less open to parenting support. The I can parent is well resourced, but also really eager to engage. And they might be the parents that we often already see in parenting programs. Whereas the I know parent is perhaps a little bit more resistant, and perhaps one of those parents who thinks, you know what, I was parented, I've turned out fine. I'm not sure that I need extra help and I'm too busy. We have the I try mindset. And this parent is also one that we would really want to target in terms of recruitment for parenting programs out in the community. So they might be under-resourced. They're often, we all are carrying a really high mental load. There's a lot of pressure on parents and families. Might be juggling a lot as well. So these are parents who might be a little self-critical. They want balance, they're time poor, so it's hard, but they also do have a little bit of capacity. Compared to the I survive parents, I'm tripping myself up, but just to emphasize, any of us can be in these mindsets, and we're not so much trying to describe particular parents, but just more the way of thinking that can very much be based on our environment and what's happening for us. So the I survive mindset happens when we are incredibly under-resourced. We're facing a lot of stressors, potentially grief, family separation, intergenerational trauma. It's really important that it's possible that in this mindset, it may not be the right time for parenting support, but it can certainly still be offered. And as parents hopefully move back into the I try or even potentially the I can mindset, it may be that they have a little bit more capacity to engage. It was really important for us to consider these different mindsets because what we want to do is design daily growth with each of these in mind. We don't want to design with just those highly resourced, highly capable parents in mind, because then we really are going to miss others. So that was our starting point. I'm going to walk you through some of the decisions we made about what daily growth looks like too. So we wanted to create something that's really flexible, that's really engaging, but that's really quick and easy for parents. So it's not too time intensive. What we know, and just ignoring the slide for a moment, what we know from other research is traditionally parent programs are offered in the community. They might be face-to-face, every week. And then many groups have moved online, and I think that does improve accessibility for those living regionally or remotely or in rural areas. And it can also reduce stigma. But the difficulty, what we've found is that there are still, most parents don't engage. So they might click on it and sign up, but they don't necessarily complete any or even most of the program, unfortunately. So this is a really difficult issue that all of us in parenting research are facing. And so these were some of the questions we had in mind as we went about our co-design. So we wanted a way that we could keep parents engaged. Maybe it's impossible. I myself am a parent and I wonder whether it's impossible, but this is our thinking and our motivators. So we wanted to ask whether we can engage them with something that is from adult and so public health and adult mental health that have been used really effectively, which is an ecological momentary intervention design. So the idea is that you prompt parents multiple times a day. So, for example, in the morning and then in the evening, you ask them how they're going. And then if they're wanting a resource, you can provide them something in the moment that actually is relevant to what's happening to them. So it is supposed to be tailored to something right then and there. So just going back, what we want from that is not to overburden parents. We don't want to be having them engage with a parenting resource every single day. That's probably too much. So what we did with our design process here was we needed to check whether this approach would work at all for parents, and we weren't sure. We needed to check when parents might be able to use a parenting app in their very busy days. And we needed to understand when they should receive support. So as I said, what the aim was with Daily Growth was to provide tailored support so that, let's say a parent is offered a 3-minute video, it's about something that's highly relevant to them, hopefully to improve their memory and just make the content a little bit more easy to apply in the moment. So, for example, it might be about, siblings struggling to share or kids struggling with bedtime and not staying in bed, asking for treats before dinner, etc. We also have offered 3 different types of programs, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So the next step, as I mentioned, was really to check that this approach would even work and be relevant for parents. And so we ran a technical ecological momentary assessment or intervention pilot study with 90 diverse parents. Actually, before I get into that, the way that we wanted to understand the most common parenting situations that parents discuss, you can't tailor it unless we know that. So we first did a study which was looking at text mining of Reddit posts. So this is an international community where parents and carers come online, mums and dads, and they ask questions of each other. They share things that have happened. So we wanted to know what are the most common parenting issues that parents raise and discuss there. We took that in to this ecological momentary intervention pilot, and we wanted to understand when the parenting situations were happening during the day, what were the most common ones, how were parents going throughout the day in terms of their emotion regulation and affect. We wanted to test the time of day that parents are most likely to respond on an app. We wanted to know when they were with their child. So there were a lot of little really technical elements that we were testing there. We then went into a pilot where we tested some really small prototype videos of Daily Growth. So we actually just had 10 videos where the full Daily Growth now has more than 90 videos in the app. And we tested that with 190 parents, prompting them twice a day. We wanted to test our survey, our actual survey items of how we prompt them. We wanted to test whether parents were responding. We wanted to test whether they were, it was acceptable, etc., and feasible. We then conducted qualitative interviews with 10 parents, one-on-one over an hour, to talk about their experiences. And then we made some changes based on the findings, and then ran a second pilot study with 108 parents. This year we're doing a number of other things and really moving from, now that we have a launched Daily Growth parenting app completed, we're now moving into thinking about how we can reach out in the community and make sure that we're partnering with community organisations so that we do reach all of the diverse families out there. So we are running focus groups, and we've just completed one of them with First Nations mums and dads. We're doing a range of different studies looking at brief behavioural messaging. So this is some excellent literature that's come from more from the public health area around how do we communicate, how do we engage at a universal level. Given that we also know that when you talk about universal, it's tricky because there is going to be no single message that is interesting, engaging for everyone. So it is also thinking about tailoring and tailoring in a place-based way of actually partnering with particular communities and really understanding their specific needs. So I mentioned we're doing the work with First Nations families, but we're also doing some work with Chinese families. We have a range of other bits and pieces in the pipeline to understand implementation strategies. So with professionals, other providers of parenting and other community-based programs around the world, and doing a Delphi study to understand what's worked well and what hasn't. And we're in the middle of our trial funded by an NHMRC Ideas grant, and I will speak a little bit more about that too. But first, I just wanted to bring to life what Daily Growth has become. And I'm really proud of how it looks and feels, and that is all due to working, as I said, really closely with a designer right from the beginning, so that she and her team really deeply understood what we were trying to do and what our partners and parents and carer end users were thinking. So first of all, our first program that we offer is emotion coaching. We didn't want to have we didn't want Daily Growth to be a one-size-fits-all approach. As I said, it was really trying to offer different approaches, hopefully to appeal to different parents and carers with different needs and interests. So emotion coaching guides parents on coaching children around emotions. It's about being mindful of their emotions, noticing their child's emotions as well as their own, and viewing emotions as an opportunity for connection, and listening to, validating, and labeling children's emotions. The next one is active play. So during early childhood, we know there's actually really good evidence showing that physical activity often takes the form of play-based activity, and that it is really important for emotion regulation and mental health outcomes. So by engaging in these activities, we hope that parents and children can connect and bond. And it also provides opportunities for parents to coach children around emotions and teach them effective strategies for emotion regulation. There's good evidence that physical activity engages the body and brain. It improves attention, focus, and impulse control. And finally, our very special collaboration with Waiapa Work. Waiapa Work retain the IP as they are a Indigenous-led organisation. I myself am a Waiapa Work practitioner, and it's based on just such beautiful and important wisdom about how we all are the most healthy when we are connected to earth and nature. So it's an earth connection practice. It's based on ancient Indigenous wisdom. It's an Aboriginal wisdom, but actually echoed really in First Nations peoples right around the world. And it's focusing on taking care of the earth as the starting point for emotion regulation and well-being. Within the app, there's models of care that really bring to life the core concepts behind each of these, but that's really just an adjunct to provide a little bit of information to those parents that typically do want more. For most families, the core will be the 3-minute videos that they see, and I'll show you a sneak peek in a moment. We really, I guess we're very focused on inclusivity and diversity. So we have partnered with Waiapa Work, and they're providing cultural leadership and oversight across the whole project. We have also really thought about the design in terms of not just the script and what we say, but also the visual elements. And it's been a real trial and error process. So we've kind of had different layers of trialing. Within our pilot studies, we were also trialing different visual approaches, different styles of animation, showing potatoes where we were trying to just get away from the problem of showing just one type of family. What we've found, and we've got really strong feedback from many, many places, is that doesn't work. Instead, people have to see themselves to really relate and to engage and to understand. And so that means that in And everything that we're doing, we're trying to show a lot of diversity by showing lots of different families represented. Lots of different speakers on our videos too. Also just thinking about that in terms of our language and how we've developed our scripts, etc. And then the last point there is around recruitment and engagement. And this is really what we're diving into now, is thinking about how do we go about this? And, our hunches and what we're doing is a real place-based approach by thinking about particular communities and their needs. So let's see whether this is going to work. Let's see if I can play. No. Oh, let's have a go. I'm just, sorry. It's always a challenge. No, it doesn't want to. Okay, just give me one moment and I will get that up. I'm juggling two screens, which is always fun. All right. I was trying to do it, I normally just have it really basic, but I tried to make it fancy and it's backfired on me. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing just so that hopefully I'm entertaining my... Sophie, am I still screen sharing or I'm not?
No.
Okay.
No, you're not right now.
Okay. Okay. I'm so sorry, everyone.
The beauty and the challenges of technology, Haylers. It's what you've worked with so well, and it's lots of complexity to it.
Yes, and trying to do something different, which always backfires. I'm just going to keep going and then I'll come back and find those videos for you. I reckon one of them. I'll just keep going. I'm so sorry. Okay, promise I will show you. Oh, that's the wrong one. So what I'm going to do now is just zoom in on the focus of the pilot study. So this was, we developed just 10 short videos and we used an online platform to test over 2 weeks. So it was with 184 parents. And as I said, this is really about building up our confidence in the sort of technical elements of what we were doing and just making sure that it was acceptable and feasible. Okay, so our aims were to test the feasibility of the prototype and also of the twice daily prompts and the survey items that we were using. It's testing the feasibility of the research evaluation method, so our actual survey items and questionnaires, and also testing the acceptability of the content, so the video resources. We recruited 184 parents in this randomised controlled trial of children aged 2 to 4. We've actually since extended to 2 to 5. They completed baseline and post surveys, and over 2 weeks they were prompted in the morning and in the evening at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And there were just 10-minute, 3-minute videos. Our control condition was a link to the Raising Children Network government website. We through all of our different steps, had developed some items to test the daily surveys, and these were the ones we originally tested, and they have since been a little tweaked. But the idea was really just getting at how parents are feeling right then. So the extent you feel right now, the extent that they feel upset, their child is angry or sad, their emotions are overwhelming, or they have difficulty controlling their emotions. This was an online recruitment, so we didn't have capacity to start our place-based approaches. So this was very much sort of a technical pilot recruited online. You can see at the bottom there that we had 96 randomised into our daily growth prototype compared to 88 in our control. As is really common when you do an online study, our pilot characteristics are not they don't show the true diversity of our Australian population. We did have slightly more single parents joining. We had 14% who were in the low income bracket compared to about 21% in the population. And also the same with those who didn't complete high school. 15 compared to 28% who were not born in Australia, and 6% who were Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Now, we were really looking at feasibility in terms of a few quite technical elements. So we wanted to know, if we prompt parents twice a day, how often do they respond? And so we found that on average, they responded 63% of the time to our prompts. So that actually means that we were hearing from them at least once a day. To be honest, I think that's too much, because it's quite a burden when that's the case. Ideally, we're keen to sort of have a touch point with them maybe once every 2 days. We see there that 89% completed 24% or more of the prompts. 77% of our parents completed 50% or half of our prompts, and just 30% completed 75%. So that was on average completing, one and a half times a day. That's a lot. We wanted to know also, did our daily surveys identify when parents need support? So we found that they were eligible for a resource about half the time, which equates to about 10 times per week. We found this is too much. We want to offer daily growth over 6 weeks, because that's sort of how you change behaviour, hearts and minds. And in our qualitative feedback from parents, we also, heard that it was too much. And so what we wanted to do was change it a little bit and make it a bit more flexible, which is what we did in the second version. We really, in this version, as I say, we had our first prototype videos, and it was just over 2 weeks. It wasn't a lot. It was just very, very light touch, and not actually what daily growth is. So we didn't have, this wasn't a full test. In our daily surveys, we were aiming to engage maybe 5 times per week. We did achieve that, if not more. We wanted to evaluate in the moment effects, and we did find that that seemed to be feasible in our data. So we asked questions beforehand, and if they want a resource, then we also ask the same questions, just 2 questions afterwards. And then we wanted to trigger a resource 2 to 5 times per week, which actually means not just the questions, but offering them their 3-minute video. We found that that was too much. We were doing that too much. We wanted parents to have more control, and that's what they were telling us. So in our second pilot, that's what we've changed, and that's what's gone forward into the main trial for daily growth and the main parenting app. In terms of acceptability data, we asked questions about how they were finding daily growth, again, with low expectations here, because this was just a prototype. So daily growth resources, were they the right length? We found that most people agreed. Did they encounter issues? I can tell you there were many issues with the app. So it's surprising only 31% reported they did. Would they recommend? We also really happy that most of them said that, 83%, and that they'll use the skills learned through the Daily Growth app. Again, this was just, actually we only piloted 2 of the programs as well, and it was just a small amount. So that's, really encouraging, and that the Daily Growth app was easy to use. Again, this is pilot data. We did have a pretty decent sample size because it was a technical pilot, but I won't interpret this too far, just because it really was just a prototype. But it's looking really promising in terms of showing some differences. So this is the intervention versus the control group at the 2 weeks, showing reductions in child depression and parent emotion dysregulation and negative affect. parent psychological distress measured on the Kessler-6, and also showing changes in parent beliefs. As I mentioned, really the next steps are about thinking, how can we trigger the resource? So what we've done now is based on the parent feedback, we now just ask parents, would you like a resource? Would you like some support? So that they're in control, and that over the whole period of 6 weeks, hopefully it's a little less overwhelming. We wanted to test whether it is possible to prompt parents twice a day, and it does seem feasible. However, I think the findings from the main trial will be really important to understand that better. We also wanted to understand whether the video resources are acceptable. Can you offer, parenting support in such short little bursts? Overwhelmingly, the feedback from all of our co-design steps has been, can you make them shorter? Everyone is so busy that they want something really targeted, really specific to help then and there or that week, whatever's kind of turning around in their head that's happened recently. In terms of whether that's effective, though, whether it actually changes parenting behaviour and beliefs and improves parents' own emotional regulation, and also in the long run, children's emotional regulation skills, that's yet to be determined. So that's really what their main trial will establish. But overwhelmingly, there was support to go ahead with the larger trial, which is really promising. As I've mentioned, our next steps are very much focused on the place-based approach. We've now got this beautiful app ready to go, and we're really deep in communities talking about daily growth. It is a randomised controlled trial, but at the same time, we're collecting a lot of data, so it's not just about we're being powered to detect differences between our various control groups. We're wanting to test each of the different parenting programs, but also our main one is a combined program. And what we want to do is collect a lot of data so that we can then personalise that. So based on parent characteristics, when they first come into the app, we then want to understand which program best suits to best engage and meet each parent's needs initially, so that they're hopefully interested, engaged, and will continue. And with apps, that is sort of that's the tricky question: is how to make it sticky, how to make people keep coming back, so that they are getting that ongoing support. Also, we need to know how to get them in through the door in the first place, and that also is very challenging. And really, we're humble in terms of what we're aiming for. We're really just trying for something that's just a little bit better. The age group 2 to 5 there are no universal services here in Australia, or really very much around the world. We have lots of, we're really lucky. We're aiming for universal support for 3-year-old kinder and 4-year-old kinder, but it's not yet there. We have the universal systems at birth and across early childhood in terms of nurse home visiting, so the maternal and child health in Victoria, and we will be working with them. But by toddler years, that's certainly not universal anymore. So you have this really sticky issue that it's actually really challenging to launch something universal when there is no universal system or program. So what we're doing is, I guess, just a blanket approach of just trying to go everywhere, to clinical services, to health services, to maternal and child health, to kindergartens, supported play groups, libraries, you name it. We're trying to partner with particular communities and develop a deeper relationship. As I mentioned very briefly, we're also conducting some studies trying to understand what has worked in other contexts around the world with universal parenting programs, and also other types of programs too. And so that's, we hope to have an embedded implementation trial where at the moment we're just doing our best with everything we can think of, and then we'll have an enhanced period that we can compare to, where we are implementing what we've learned in terms of various implementation strategies, and in particular really trying to develop really authentic partnerships with community organisations where there might need to be some genuine reciprocal benefit, where there's something that we can provide for them to support them. Now, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and just work out how to share those videos, because I'm really keen to just give you a sneak peek. But in the meantime, Sylvia, I wonder whether we could have some questions.
Yeah, if
If
any
there are any.
questions, feel free to pop in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Just got a quick question about sustainability. So beyond the funding that you have, what plans have you got in place to sustain the sort of upkeep of the app sort of more long term?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, because these apps are fairly expensive. We're lucky at Deakin University, where I am, that we have some really working with A squared, I squared, artificial intelligence, and they have a beautiful platform that we're using for daily growth. And so it's fairly cheap as much as it can be, but it requires ongoing maintenance. And also apps themselves they're not perfect. They require constant updating. In some ways, a web-based design is better and easier, but because we were doing the daily prompts, that just wasn't possible for us. It really depends on the context, of course. And the emails, we did test that, but the emails just weren't working as effectively as you can have, when you do prompt. So I guess in terms of answering your question, I'm finding my computer is actually having some problems, so hopefully I will continue fine. And yeah, look, it's a really sticky and tricky question. I don't know that I have the answers yet. We're just exploring and having lots of conversations about next steps. But first of all, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I really just want to go through the next couple of years and get the solid data. I think there'll be a lot of information that we can get in terms of user data, how different groups of parents and carers use the app, how effective it is, the different programs we're comparing, the combined versus personalised versus each of the different programs. We can understand who comes through our door and why. There's a lot there.
Thanks. And this, while you are finding the videos, Jeanette asked a question about how were the 4 user personas. So I think there were I know, I can, I try, I survive, kind of 4 types of parenting personas are targeted differently in the app. If you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I guess in each of our processes of co-design, I didn't really sort of go through the ins and outs of that in too much depth, but what we did was we had lots of ideation and co-design workshops with our team, with our advisory group, which was made up of diverse parents and carers in the community, but also with a number of community organisations and with councils, etc. What we did was really think through each element of our design and what might be barriers, what might hinder each of those, parents and carers with each of those mindsets. And so I guess when you try and develop with the most under-resourced parents in mind, and parents potentially with they themselves are neurodivergent, or their child is, or they are culturally, linguistically diverse, they might speak another language. We do, in this first iteration, require that everyone speak English. That is a requirement, but it's going to be really important very quickly to make other versions that cater to others in the community. We've had that feedback so strongly as we start the recruitment process. So look, I think to bring it to life, even as we develop those mindsets, those personas, that that happened across a number of years, and our very first iterations reflected that we are, that the main team are from a psychology perspective. And even though we were partnering with Waiapa Work and many others, what we created was still a deficit focus. And we needed that feedback from actually some of our from Waiapa Work, our Indigenous partners, and also from some people in our advisory group to say, hold on a second, still sounding deficit focused. You're describing what they're not doing well. What are their strengths? What's protective for them? And so we had to then redo that again. So I don't know that we've perfectly got it yet, but it is a journey, and it's just always thinking, and being open to that feedback.
Liz,
Yes.
it's always lovely to hear this work, and I love how thoroughly you've thought about all the different elements over time. It's been a really great work plan that you've built up to this. And having had some, looking in over time and looking at the app and things, seeing the content, I think that the content is really developed really beautifully over time. And I can see that the greatest thing is challenge is actually getting people to be actually using it, to actually starting it, to be able to get the what do you say? What's the analogy to bums on seats? Face on hand or with phone or whatever it is. And still coming back. I know that we've talked lots about recruitment, but there is this sort of challenge about how do you get to the point where people trust something or do it because everyone else is doing it in their community. Like that's how people often use things these days on a phone, isn't it? On an app. So how do you buy into that mentality of how people use and even seek parenting support these days when that's often the way it is, especially universally? So I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that and you might share some of what you've explored and thought about there.
Yeah, look, I think it is changing, isn't it, with technology? And actually, probably, I don't know if others are guilty of this, but I'm guilty of being highly influenced by my own experience and from watching those around me in terms of how they access support. So I guess that's the starting point, and then we've gone out in our co-design process and needs assessment to ask parents about that as well. So one of our key questions and studies has been around how do parents want to access support and what does that look like? Who do they trust? So how do they want to receive it, but also what should it look like? And overwhelmingly, it's about ease and accessibility. Also, coming from trusted people in the community. So, and that really varies. For some, it's about receiving it from an authority figure, a doctor, a pediatrician, or a maternal and child health nurse, or etc. For others, it's they only trust other parents. So I think it's hard to paint a one size fits all approach even with that. In terms of where they're going, we know that they're going online, aren't they? And they're often going online with a really specific question and wanting help in the moment. And as we all know, the quality of information that's offered online and also through social media, there's a lot of influences in the parenting space. Some are saying great things. I think some perhaps are less evidence-based. And so, yeah, that's really challenging. Is how do we as evidence-based practitioners highlight what we can offer and engage and compete with what it can be really challenging for us as researchers to compete on that level. So I have a video. So if there are no other questions, I will share and play that. All right. Okay. So it's one of the videos to give you a bit of a sense.
Mealtimes can be stressful for kids and parents. There are evolutionary reasons why kids may struggle with food. Children have a stronger sense of smell and taste than adults to keep them safe from eating things that are poisonous or dangerous. Lots of children also have sensory differences where they may react to the look, texture, or smell of food. This is particularly common for autistic kids or kids with ADHD. So, how can we manage mealtimes better? Mealtimes look different in different families. Some eat all together, some feed kids separately. Whatever the routine, it helps to explain to kids exactly what we expect ahead of time. Some families agree that adults decide what goes on the plate, kids decide what goes in the mouth. Young children can react strongly when they feel pressured or powerless during mealtimes. It helps them to feel secure if they have some control with at least one food on the plate that they regularly eat. It's normal for kids to struggle at mealtimes. Young children's brains haven't developed enough to manage their emotions themselves, so they need our support. When we show kids we notice and understand all of their emotions, it strengthens the bond between us and shows kids that their feelings are okay. If emotions come up, how can we manage in the moment? If mealtimes are often hard, see if you can notice your feelings. We can feel hurt and frustrated if kids spit out, throw, or play with food we've prepared. We might also worry that our child is not eating enough or eating healthily enough.
It might help to take a moment for yourself just before a meal. 5 deep breaths will help if you're feeling stressed. Next, see if you can notice what's happening for your child. Do they seem upset, frustrated, tired, or wanting to play? Labeling kids' emotions makes kids feel understood. We might say, "I wonder if you're frustrated. You don't want to eat that." If it's been a tough mealtime, try to avoid talking about it in the moment. When kids are stressed or upset, they're not able to listen. We can have a chat with our child much later, when everyone's calm at bedtime or even the next day. We can let kids know we understand their feelings. I know it's hard to eat food that you don't feel like eating. Asking your child what's hard for them may help you understand what's happening for your child. We can build dinner time traditions that are about fun and connecting. You can try and make up your own conversation cards.
I might show another one. I can show all three, but I'll show a little bit of one more and then we can see if there are more questions.
It's such a wonderful video, Lise. Yeah.
Thank you. We also really wanted to, I think it's hopefully clear, we really wanted to show diversity. So these, the families are featured in the background are in our community, our friends and colleagues often, my neighbours. And we also really want to show real people, real families. So with normal others.
Bedtime is a tricky time for lots of families. Children might struggle to separate from us if they're seeking connection, or they may need a final release of energy before they can settle down to sleep. It's possible to play some fun, active games to make bedtimes easier. The goal of active play is to play rough and tumble games with your child to help them feel physically and mentally ready for bed, and to offer a dose of physical connection and fun to make separating later easier. Rough play involves things like climbing over each other, wrestling, or mock fighting. This high energy play helps kids release energy and tension that is built up over the day.
When playing rough, we need to remind.
And just while we're here, I will show the last one, which is the Waiapa one, just so that we get a sense of all three.
We live in a time of advancing technology, and although we know it's best to minimise screen time for our young ones, sometimes they want more. If they've been on a screen for a while, they can become overstimulated, making it difficult for them to move to something else. Creating countdown rituals for children is an important part of creating a shared understanding with our child. How do we actively foster a shared understanding? In what ways can we help our child to prepare to wrap up an activity? Sometimes we may need to change their state of being to increase or release their energy. Too much of any stimulation can impact our balance. WayUpper uses elements that can help us understand different ideas. We can use the element of lightning to discharge our own pent-up energy and invite our child to do the